I'm Jack Kennedy, and they hit a lot harder in my opinion too.
What is up, everybody? My name is Keelan McNamara, and everyone's got a plan until they get hit with my views.
I am Hunter Boss. He just wanted to go to the distance by the looks of it, but he couldn't even do that.
And this is the MMA Island Podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the MMA Island Podcast. I am Jack Kennedy alongside Keelan McNamara and Hunter Boss. Well, UFC 266 was interesting, to say the least. We'll just start there, all right? This episode is basically going to be about UFC 266 because we're going to be thinking about this card for a very long time. It was incredible. Let's get started with the news. And obviously, the big news is now we're not going to be talking about Valentina Shevchenko in this segment because she was supposed to win. We all predicted she would win, and she dominated. So, first off, massive congratulations to Valentina Shevchenko. Big shout out. You're the best, very clearly. Let's get started with Robbie Lawler versus Nick Diaz. That was insanity. And we'll be talking about the main event, Alexander Volkanovski versus Brian Ortega. Two incredible fights, two incredible results. Hunter, starting with you, who was actually at UFC 266. What are you thinking?
That card was amazing. Let's just say. I mean, I know I was there, so it was that much better, but I'm sure even for people watching at home, that was one of the most entertaining cards of the year so far. But to start off with Diaz versus Lawler, this fight went pretty close to as planned as I imagined it going. You know, I thought it was going to be back and forth for the first two rounds, but I think Robbie Lawler was going to take over and come the later rounds, definitely because of he doesn't really have ring rust right now. I mean, he's been fighting for the last 6 years while Diaz has been on the sideline. So, I mean, it was very brave of Diaz to do a flying, spinning kick at the beginning of the fight. That got the whole crowd going. It was definitely just a really fun fight to watch. Robbie Lawler looked like he was young again. He looked like he was in his 30s, or 30, I should say. He definitely is in his 30s right now. But Robbie Lawler looked like he hasn't skipped a beat. It was good to see him facing a stand-up guy, not someone who's just a wrestler, because he's had wrestlers his last few fights. So congrats to Robbie Lawler. And I loved seeing Nick Diaz back in the octagon, but I think this should be his last time in the octagon, sadly. But fantastic fight, to say the least.
Yeah, I mean, we've had some amazing fight cards in the last 2 years, if not slightly less. And this is by far one of the best ones that we've had. I mean, Hunter, you are correct. For us at home, it was brilliant, which means I can't imagine how much more amazing it was. Man, just minds are blown everywhere. But on to the fight, and this fight went the way we thought it would go. You know, it just a stand-up engagement from the opening bell, unfortunately, to the very end. And both guys looked really, really good. I mean, Nick Diaz looked every part of his age, if we're being honest. You know, he absorbed a lot of heavy shots. His boxing was very good. It was constant and it was accurate. I mean, I have to say, he looked better actually than I thought that he would. But Robbie Lawler looked really, really good on the night. Like Hunter said, and I have to really agree with him on this, you know, you could tell there was no ring rust with Robbie Lawler. He looked clean, he looked crisp. His head movement was actually much better than his recent fights. He got out of the way of a lot more shots. He parried them a lot better. And the power that he got behind some of those shots was vicious. I mean, I think he probably broke Nick's nose if you saw his nose after the fight.
Yeah.
And, you know, some of his shots were just landing flush. I mean, and by the time the fight was stopped, a lot more of his shots were landing flush as well. So credit to Robbie Lawler. He sort of settled the grudge match very, very convincingly. And perhaps this could be the start of a rejuvenation for Robbie Lawler. Perhaps this is the confidence he needed. By God, I hope it is, because Robbie Lawler is one of my favorite fighters of all time. As for Nick Diaz, you know, my respect for stepping in there. You know, he could have taken any, it ended up being at middleweight, but he could have taken any fighter. He could have taken any unknown easy fighter, and he could have gotten an easy win. And he got a very, very tough opponent in Robbie Lawler, who will just be tough until the end of time. But I sadly kind of have to agree with Hunter. I think this is probably the last time we should see Nick, because the damage that he took was just mind-boggling, even for a Diaz. You know, he was taking some really hard shots, and it's probably a good thing that he couldn't get up whenever the fight was meant to be restarted, because he only would have taken more. I'm so happy that we got to see him, and I'm very happy the younger audience got to see him, but I think this should be the end for him.
Yeah, hey, I agree with your guys' assessment. I mean, just first off, it was such a fun experience from the get go. I mean, I can't even imagine what Hunter was feeling whenever Diaz was making that walk out, but that was insane. Even watching it on the TV, you couldn't even hear his background music. It was just so loud. Um, One of the few things that we were doing that a lot of the major media and people weren't talking about was just hyping up Robbie Lawler as well, because he is an absolute savage. It's so exciting to see Nick Diaz back, but we have to give Robbie Lawler his proper credit. And that's why. I mean, they went out there and in the first 2 rounds, they landed a combined like 200 punches or something like that. It was crazy. The fight lived up to the hype and more some. It was incredible. They went out there. I thought Diaz actually looked fantastic, considering him being out for what, 5 years, 6 years. He looked fantastic. He was landing shots. His boxing looked crisp. Robbie Lawler is the man. He keeps coming forward, doesn't take a step back. He's throwing the power. Diaz is throwing with more volume and everything and landing. They were just both like, it was just technical brawling for 2 rounds. Then Diaz's nose was broken. Maybe a little bit of a knee issue from training camp. I'm not upset with him, like just calling it there. I mean, he put on an absolute war, an absolute show. He's had a career that's so long. That's another thing. The damage that these guys have taken is ridiculous. So, I mean, look, I completely agree with you guys. I think that should be the end of Nick Diaz. But it was so fun. It was so fun seeing him back, and he put on a show. Robbie Lawler and Nick Diaz did exactly what we were hoping they would do, and it was amazing to watch, and I loved every second of it.
Yeah, no, fantastic all around. But when it comes to the main event with Volkanovski and Brian Ortega, it was unparalleled inside the arena.
Oh,
the arena, it was deafening, but you can hear every punch, if that makes sense. You know,
I got it.
Everyone's cheering, everyone's screaming. But when it came down to it, you could hear the thuds of the people slamming into the octagon. You can hear every single punch landed, every single kick on the inside of Brian Ortega's leg, dude. It was amazing. I'll tell you that when you see Joe Rogan standing up and holding on to people, or just anyone in that situation, that's what the whole arena was doing to each other. And whenever Alexander Volkanovski was put into a submission technique, you know, when he was put into the triangle, you know, I'm holding on to the people right next to me. Everyone in the audience is like, "Oh my God, it's going to happen! Ortega's going to be champion!" Because let me tell you this right now, the entire stadium wanted Ortega to win. So every time Ortega would put Volkanovski in either that guillotine or in that triangle choke, it was beautiful, and it was just honestly such a cool sight to be seen. The whole crowd going behind Ortega, it was awesome, and the whole crowd hated Volkanovski when he walked out. But as soon as he finished the fight, everyone was on their knees. Everyone respected him, and everyone's realizing that this guy is the true featherweight champion right now.
Man, this is why we love our sport, because this is such a strong candidate for fight of the year. And I don't care who comes next after this. This fight was unbelievable from the beginning to the end. I mean, even on TV, we got a very good sense of what Hunter just said. When Ortega did his Purge themed walkout, the noise in the arena was just mind boggling. It was so loud. And then when Volkanovski came out, it was a lot more quiet. You could just tell which side the crowd was on, really. But that fight was unbelievable. One of the best featherweight fights ever. No question about that at all. Round 3 is really where our discussion begins, because that's where this fight probably should have been won or lost. You know, Brian Ortega clips Volkanovski with a left hand. I think he caught a body kick and then knocked him down. And then he just jumped into the mounted guillotine. And everybody thought, oh my God, this is the end. This is how it ends. The jiu-jitsu black belt wins the world title. How anybody would hold on for 10 seconds in that submission, I will never understand. Alexander Volkanovski is tough on a different level entirely. And not only that, the ground game then rolls straight into Darce, which he then gets out of as well. And it goes straight into a triangle. Those are 2 of Ortega's 3 best submissions, the triangle and the guillotine. And Volkanovski got out of both of them. And to be honest with you, I would never, ever say Ortega quits, because he never does quit. But you could tell in Ortega's body language when he went back to his corner after round 3, something inside him wasn't the same, because you could tell he was saying to his corner, why did not finish the fight? You know, I think Ortega hyped this up so much that if he locked in the triangle or if he locked in the guillotine, that's it, it was done. I don't think he counted on Volkanovski being as damn tough as he is. And I think that's what changed the momentum of the whole fight. And that's where it was really won for Volkanovski. But credit to Alex, he is the true king of featherweights, and there's no argument anymore. His boxing is incredible. His wrestling is so, so good. And even on the ground, just to escape those submissions was worthy of applause in its own right. But an amazing, amazing main event, and one that will live on in certainly my memory for years.
Oh man, I mean, I just watching it on TV was the best experience ever. I know I keep saying it, but Hunter, you actually being there is the coolest thing ever for me. Just knowing that you were there, witnessing greatness, because that fight was just great. That's what it was. It will go down in history as one of the best, if not the best, featherweight fights in the entire company's history. Um, Volkanovski, we talked about the crowd reaction to it, and even my own personal reaction after the fight. No matter what you're thinking beforehand, you have to respect both fighters after they put on that big of a show. I mean, just Ortega losing again, just like the Holloway fight. Him losing this is really not even a shame. He's gonna go back. He's gonna try and improve and stuff like that. Obviously, we'll talk about that in a little bit. But he looked honestly not terrible. Volkanovski is just that good, which is what's crazy, and that's what he proved. That was the big question. Is Volkanovski good enough to beat not just the old Brian Ortega, but the new and improved, decent on the stand up Brian Ortega? And the answer is yes. We had a lot of questions answered too. Why Volkanovski does not want to go to the ground, because 2 seconds to him getting dropped on the ground, he's in like 15 different submissions. Even when he's throwing ground and pound, and when the fight probably should have been stopped, he's still almost getting armbarred and stuff like that. That's how good Brian Ortega is on the ground. That third round will go down in history as one of the best rounds ever in a title fight. I mean, it was just crazy. I thought, just like everybody else, I thought the fight was done when he had that mounted guillotine. I was like, there's no way he can get out of this. And Volkanovski got out of the mounted guillotine and the triangle choke, not by technique, but just by toughing it out, which I don't think anyone else in the entire UFC featherweight division. I really don't think anyone else could do that. But Volkanovski's like, I'm the champ. I'm fighting through it. I'm not doing it. And he did it. And it was unbelievable. Then he turned it out and probably won the round too. He did win the round after all that ground and pound. I mean, it's just insane. The fight was insane. Massive credit to both Volkanovski and Ortega. That is what we want to see in the UFC right there. Those are the type of fighters. Those are the breed of fighter that we pay to see, that we love to see. And the UFC's featherweight division right now with the big three, Holloway, Volkanovski, Ortega, it's in good hands. And we are getting some phenomenal fights.
Yeah, Alex Volkanovski has broken jiu-jitsu.
he's his own version of Derek Lewis, where he just stands up. Exactly. So, all right, guys, now moving on to the best of the best. And this is a fun one because, in case you haven't heard, Hunter was at UFC 266. We've only mentioned it a few times. Hunter, what were some of your favorite moments from actually being there in International Fight Week and obviously Fight Night for UFC 266?
International Fight Week was such a cool experience. I got to see so many different fighters. I got a ton of autographs. I mean, Tony Ferguson, he was such a cool sport. I got to meet him. I got a picture with him. Super awesome. Corey Sandhagen I met too. He was a lot of fun. Not as big as you think he would be. Honestly, I thought he would be taller, maybe a little bit more bulky.
Did you tell him he was my number one draft pick?
Yeah, he is. Yeah, he stays ready to fight, which is my favorite part. Because actually, I think he might have a fight coming up, which we might talk about.
We're gonna have to talk about the next one.
Next one. But honestly, the fight itself in the arena was some of the coolest experiences you could see. When it first started, we had that 15-second knockout with the Smellsburger, which was awesome. I mean, the arena wasn't full at that time, and maybe at a quarter capacity, but it was booming when everyone was cheering from that knockout. That was so cool. Second coolest thing there, I would say, probably what is his name? Curtis Blades' walkout to Mortal Kombat. The whole arena went insane.
I love it.
The grounds were shaking. I went with my two roommates. My roommates were holding me like, this is the coolest walkout ever. Sadly, it wasn't the coolest fight ever, but you know what? That's okay. It happens. Yeah. We kind of thought that was going to happen as it is. So, but the coolest part by far, I have to say, coolest thing in the whole thing had to be Ortega's walkout to the Purge. That was the coolest thing. I mean, we were hearing sirens. We were really confused at first, and we heard the purge, and we're like, "Oh, that's really cool." And then the screen it flashed to the 3 masks, and everyone was going crazy. That's when I was like, "Man, Ortega means business. Like this is the scariest walkout I think I've seen in a while." But that whole experience in general definitely one to be remembered.
That is incredible. I love that so much. How about the Diaz walkout? Was that insane too?
Oh, definitely cool. So the entirety of the crowd was all behind Diaz. So there was like very few Lawler chants in there. I was actually chanting Lawler because I felt really I chanted for both of them because I love both fighters. So whenever each one was walking out, I would chant for them. Everyone was looking at me like, "Well, you want 2 people to win now?" I did. But anyways, it was really cool. The walkout song, just Diaz being out there, it was deafening once again. But it was so cool to see a Diaz brother walk out. And at one time in the early prelims, Nate Diaz walked out just to see the fights, and the whole crowd was cheering like he was fighting. It was insane. Really cool though. Anytime a celebrity went on screen, everyone would cheer. Very cool experience.
That is so awesome. I love every second of that. So yeah, let's talk about the discussion of the week now. Transitioning, we have a very interesting one, and we're going to be talking about Brian Ortega, who did lose to Alexander Volkanovski. We talked about that. What's next for Brian Ortega? Hunter, what do you think?
Back to back. Let's do it. Now, this is tough, okay? The reason I say this is because right now, what I see in the featherweight division, I see 3 champions. I think the featherweight division has turned into the lightweight division right now. How competitive the lightweight division is, how competitive the featherweight division is now.
Yep.
For Ortega, this is a difficult question to answer. If he were to stay at featherweight, I would say Arnold Allen. I think Arnold Allen should get that opportunity. He has one of the longest win streaks right now in the UFC, let alone the featherweight division. He's one of the most entertaining fighters, though he doesn't get a ton of knockdowns. He's very versatile in his striking range and even wrestling. Do I think he's going to beat Ortega? That's one of the questions. I do see Ortega as a champion of its own. You know,
yep, I agree.
Volkanovski is easily a champion. Max Holloway, I still see as champion. In Ortega, I don't see anyone else but Volkanovski and Holloway beating. So the featherweight division is so difficult right now. But here's option number 2. I would not hate to see Brian Ortega move up to lightweight and see how he does up there. I think he could do magnificent things up there. I think a fight between him and Charles Oliveira would be one of the coolest Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu matchups on the planet. And let alone just seeing him tough it out against some of the coolest lightweights, like, say, give him Tony Ferguson or give him, I wouldn't say give him Dustin Poirier because he would just absolutely die. But, it would be difficult. So I would love to see a move up to lightweight from our Brian Ortega, just because I don't think he's going to be champion as long as Volkanovski and Holloway are around. But if he were to stay at featherweight and try his chances again, climb up the ladder, I think a great place to start would be with Arnold Allen.
Man, that is a good question, and a very prevalent question as well. I'm just thinking of the visceral image of Dustin Poirier murdering Brian Ortega.
You don't need to think about, yeah.
Oh man, I gotta admit, there's definitely 2 very clear paths that can be taken with this question, and they concern the weight divisions. And what interests me the most is whenever I actually saw Ortega at the weigh-ins, we've been talking a lot about how the weight cut might be affecting Ortega and whether it's actually inhibiting him being at featherweight. And yet he came in a pound under championship weight. So it doesn't seem like it's troubling him that much. As a result, I think it's possible that he does actually stay at featherweight because of that. So if he does stay at featherweight, there's 2 or 3 options that I would really, really love to see. The most likely, I think, is Yair Rodriguez. I think that would be a really good fight. The reason I say Yair is not only stylistically would it be amazing, Yair's fighting Max Holloway next, and most likely Holloway will beat him. If Ortega can beat a top 5 contender in Yair Rodriguez, that keeps him firmly in that triangle at featherweight at the very, very top. And it also keeps him active and it keeps him relevant within the top echelons of the division. So I think that would be an amazing fight. I think it's a likely fight as well. I'd love to see Giga Chikadze against Ortega. I think that would just be an absolute fire starter of a matchup. Stylistically, both those guys would just absolutely eat into each other. Chikadze's wrestling is dominant, but then we've seen with Volkanovski what Ortega can do once you've got him on the ground. And this last option, I don't think will happen. I'm only saying it because stylistically, I would just love to see it. Edson Barbosa. Because Ortega would have to get that fight to the ground, or Barbosa would probably just kick him into a million pieces. So if we're at featherweight, that's my picture for what would happen. The other option is moving up to lightweight, basically. I'm not going to spend too much time on that because Hunter's covered that really well. If the weight does become an issue, I can see him move up to the lightweight perhaps in the next couple of years or so. I think Ortega will still be around for a bit to try and challenge for the title. But if he moves up to the lightweight, I'd love to see a fight against someone like Charles Oliveira. It would be the most exciting jiu-jitsu match we have ever seen.
Yeah, no, I agree with you guys. I mean, see, for me, the thing is, I don't know if Ortega is physically big enough to make, like, to be at 155. There are some guys, like, whenever I got to meet Zabit Magomed Shripov, right? He seems like, just like Hunter was saying before we got on, referring to Corey Sandhagen, they seem like they would be bigger. Just because they're tall doesn't mean that they're physically that big, which is why I think John Jones is actually having trouble making heavyweight right now, why his body looks not proportional and everything like that.
Very, very true.
So I don't know if he is going to be, he's not a very muscly guy. I don't know if he's able to just decide, okay, I'm going to go up to 155, because on fight day, he might be weighing like 160, but he's not. When he's facing a guy, we mentioned Dustin Poirier. Why do we think Dustin Poirier would kill him? Because he's got the grappling defense and he's just so much physically bigger. Just comparing the two guys, that's a very big difference in weight class, which is why I don't think we'll see Ortega at 155 anytime soon. Although I don't hate it. If he does decide to go 2 years and get physically ready for it, then I'm all for it. But right now, if we're saying Brian Ortega, your next fight, just put on the pounds, go up to 155, oof, I don't think so. I think those guys are too big. Although I would love to see that Charles Oliveira matchup, because the problem is, though, with that fight would be on the feet the entire time. Like that fight would, because they wouldn't mess with each other on the ground, although we would love to see it on the ground. That fight would just be on the feet, which would, hey, I'm still for it. That'd be amazing. But as for Ortega, his next fight, I love Calvin Kattar. I think that's the way to go.
That's good.
I love, Edson Barbosa. Those would be such fun matchups. Arnold Allen, I think, makes a lot of sense, honestly, under the circumstances. But right now, I think Calvin Kattar is the most logical option. He's still up there. Yes, he's coming off of that loss to Max Holloway. He doesn't have a fight right now. He's sitting right there. Stylistically, I think that's a phenomenal matchup because I think Kattar has a substantial advantage on the feet compared to Ortega. But can Calvin Kattar deal with a guy that is so good at grappling like Brian Ortega? Ortega in the 4th and 5th round took down Volkanovski, like actually took him down, which no one's been able to do or even really tried to do. So I think he could take down Calvin Kattar if he goes to the ground against Ortega. Ooh, things get very interesting very quick. I do love the Yair Rodriguez shout, but we got to see how Yair's health is. I'm being serious about this. We got to see how his health is following that Max Holloway fight, because I think we're all favoring Max Holloway. Like, that sounds very harsh, and that sounds like almost like we're taking a shot at him. But look at what happened to Calvin Kattar. Look what happened to Brian Ortega. That stylistically, I think that fight is just a horrible matchup for Yair Rodriguez, and we'll go more in depth as we get closer to the fight. But I think that's Max Holloway 10 times out of 10 in that fight. And depending on how much damage Yair Rodriguez actually takes, Brian Ortega might be done recovering from this Volkanovski fight. And Kattar might be, the timelines of this is also a thing that we have to consider. Because Arnold Allen, I think he might want to fight before. Ortega's going to have to take months just to recover. Yeah. And then he'll think about getting a fight. Arnold Allen's one of those guys that's going to keep fighting. Giga Chikadze is one of those guys that's going to keep fighting and everything like that. But yeah, there's so many matchups you could make with Brian Ortega. And just an amazing podcast about just an amazing fight card that we will be thinking about for many weeks to come. Everyone, thank you so much for listening. As always, make sure to like and subscribe on YouTube. You can listen to us everywhere, literally everywhere, including iTunes and Spotify. Make sure to follow us on Instagram at MMA.island and check out our website, MMAisland.net. Thanks again, everyone, so much for listening. Great podcast, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, everybody.